Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex topics using the source material itself. Today, we're looking at a feeling that I think is pretty much everywhere these days. This sense that things are just, well, wrong. That the systems we all depend on are fundamentally broken.
So we're going to peel back the layers on this pattern of systemic failure. And we're going to start with a case that is, it's pretty much the definition of a botched investigation. It's where this feeling of wrongness spreads almost like an infection, breeding cynicism and distrust.
So we begin with the death of Jeffrey Epstein in a federal prison cell. This is a case that just seems to raise more questions than it ever answers. And honestly, it serves as a masterclass in how accountability can just evaporate.
Okay, so the first rule of literally any investigation is to secure the scene, right? But this timeline, it reveals a pretty stunning failure right out of the gate. There's a full 3-hour gap between when the body was found and when the first official photograph was taken. By the time the FBI showed up, 7 hours had passed. Just think about that. 7 hours where pretty much anything could have happened.
This right here lays bare just how many basic policies were violated. But the biggest one, the most critical one, is that Epstein was left alone. Remember, after a previous suspected suicide attempt, it was mandatory for him to have a roommate. The Department of Justice itself called the failure to give him one a potentially fatal mistake.
And crime scene experts who looked at the photos, they weren't just critical, they were appalled. They called it, and this is a direct quote, some really shoddy work.
They pointed to a complete absence of work. They said investigators failed to follow the most basic protocols, what one expert called Evidence Photography 101.
So all of this just points to what they call poor crime scene control. Evidence was moved, the scene was disturbed hours before the FBI, the agency with the best tools even stepped foot on the tier. That compromises the entire investigation from the very, very beginning.
And this leads to the most glaring, almost unbelievable inconsistency of all, the noose itself.
Just let that sink in for a second. The official autopsy, the cornerstone of the whole investigation, included a diagram of a noose that the government later admitted was the wrong one. This isn't just some small mistake. It's a fundamental breakdown of transparency that completely poisons the official conclusion.
Now, this pattern of wrongness isn't just limited to forensic failures. It extends to how our institutions communicate and, well, how they function, or in a lot of cases, how they fail to function.
So, during protests in Portland, federal officials were using incredibly charged language, words like terrorism, insurrection, and this shows a huge disconnect between what they were saying and what was actually happening on the ground. A U.S. district judge who reviewed the situation ruled that those claims were, quote, untethered from reality. So you have two entirely different versions of the truth coming from two branches of the same government.
And this same kind of institutional blockage, it pops up even when we're just trying to pursue pure knowledge. During a government shutdown, NASA was blocked from releasing crucial data from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, data that, by the way, had already been collected. As Professor Avi Loeb so perfectly put it, this wasn't some conspiracy, it was just a signature of terrestrial stupidity.
So all these failures, in our justice system, in our political language, in basic bureaucracy, they're not just abstract ideas. They have a real human cost, and they fuel that sense of nihilism, that things are just broken and maybe they can't be fixed.
For recent college grads, trying to find a job isn't just about the money. It's an emotional strain. It's a mental strain that starts to chip away at their sense of identity. They followed the rules, they got the degree, and now they feel like the system just has no place for them.
This number just shows you the scale of that struggle. Can you imagine being a professional job recruiter, someone who knows the system inside and out, and submitting over 1,000 applications for yourself, only to be met with total silence? It just turns hope into this feeling that the system is failing you personally.
Or how about this? A quiet proposal to sell off federal student loan debt to private companies. This is a policy choice that could hurt millions of people, basically prioritizing government balance sheets over actual human beings. It could hand borrowers over to lenders who are, in the words of one source, not as forgiving.
Okay, so now let's zoom way out for a second and see the true absurdity of this whole pattern of incompetence, to really understand the gap between what we're capable of and what we actually do.
We have the technology and the sheer brainpower to think about storing 1.6 yottabytes of data. That is 1.6 trillion bytes. That's nearly 9 times the amount of data the entire world is expected to generate in 2025 inside a single human skull. It's just a mind-boggling testament to human potential.
And yet, our own simple terrestrial bureaucracy can bring the flow of information we already have to a grinding halt. And that's the real irony, isn't it? We can imagine storing yottabytes of data, but we can't figure out how to keep our own systems running just to release data we already got from another planet.
So what happens? What happens when this wrongness just appears at every single level? When incompetence becomes the norm, from a prison cell to the halls of power to the very frontiers of science?
We've seen a consistent pattern here. A compromised crime scene, political language that's untethered from reality, a stalled data stream from Mars, economic policies that make people feel completely abandoned. It really is like an infection of wrongness, and it's touching every part of the system. Look, this isn't about one mistake or one bad actor. It's a systemic condition, and it just breeds cynicism. It validates that nagging feeling in your gut that nothing works the way it's supposed to, that the people in charge are either incompetent or dishonest, and that at the end of the day, you're on your own. This systemic failure, it proves that feeling right, that pervasive sense that something is fundamentally broken. And it leaves us with the most important and maybe the most unanswerable question of all. When systems are broken at every single scale, where on earth does accountability even begin?